Welcome to Silent Symptoms, a Black mental health podcast. I am your host, Katasso Fridge, a Florida-based therapist. This podcast focuses on mental health, stigmas, and social injustices that affect the Black community. This podcast was created to bring awareness about mental health and can be used as an educational guide, but this is not to be used as a replacement for seeking help from a therapist. I hope you enjoy the podcast. Today on Silent Symptoms, I wanted to talk about McKenzie Adams. She was making national headlines because she's 9 years old and she died by suicide. And what I mean by that, she actually hung herself because what her mother suspects was the bullying that she was getting from her school. So this whole entire school year, she was going through a lot of things. Her first school that she went to, the first part of the school year, she was being extremely bullied, and her mother decided to move her from that particular school to a new school so that she could get a fresh start and start to make new friends and probably think that, the bullying thing would go away. But unfortunately, when she got to the new school, she started riding to her school with a neighbor who was also her best friend, and they were a white family. So they would go to school together every single day. And when she got to school, she was being bullied. What she allegedly told her mother was that people at her school were telling her to die. She was ugly. She's trying to be white. Why is she always hanging out with that white boy? Which I found really problematic, especially in the Black community. We want togetherness, but we don't choose to tell our children about how we should actually give other people respect as well. Because what we're going through right now is that, a lot of kids are starting to commit suicide or die by suicide, which is a new term really. From 2016 to 2018, the rate has gone up like double. Kids between the ages of 9 and 12 are actually dying by suicide. They're hanging themselves, using firearms to harm themselves because of certain things that they're going through in school. And they're saying that, a lot of the kids experiencing suicidal ideations during the school year, when it's during the summertime, they don't particularly have these issues. So that leads me to think that, the environment that they're in is really hindering them and is really not providing a safe haven, because a lot of kids spend about 8 hours in school, and while they spending time in school, they're going through bullying, and the schools are trying to implement a lot of anti-bullying tactics, trying to fix the issue. But when it comes down to it, when we look at statistics, not a lot of kids are getting help in the school. Most of the time, they report back to their parents and say, hey, this child is getting bullied, or, there is no real repercussions for kids who bully other kids. And, what I also find problematic as well is that, a lot of people are saying, oh, they need to toughen up. When we were in school, we got bullied, people made fun of us, but this is a new era. We live in the era of social media. A lot of the kids have so much access to harm themselves when they're going through things. And then two, I like to reference the Black community because this is an education of our people. So number one, we don't even check on, distress, the signs of distress in your children. We always say, hey, you're too young to be going through anything. That doesn't mean anything. A lot of kids actually start to show depressive symptoms at the age of as small as 5 years old, 6 years old. It may seem like it's unbelievable, but it's true. So if your kid is constantly telling you he or she doesn't want to go to school, that's a sign right there. All of a sudden, if they had straight A's, the grades start slipping, they withdrawing socially, they aren't talking to people, or, when they come home, they seem like they're extremely sad. That right there kind of tells you that there's something going on. And a lot of parents who have had their kids die by suicide say they had all these signs, but they didn't really attribute it to anything that they were going through at school. And I'm not saying school is to blame or other kids are to blame, but at the same time, as parents, if we educate ourselves about how to watch out for the signs for our children, half of this stuff will probably be prevented, or trying to get them some type of help, provide them with coping skills, because being constantly bullied every single day is tough for anyone, especially young kids who are trying to come to themselves, trying to learn who they are. It's very difficult to adjust. And, McKenzie's mom, she expressed that, she did everything she could. She talked to administration. She talked to her teachers. And there was nothing really being done. And, to show that she has made effort, she removed her child from the first school to second school, still experienced the same thing. So this story has been unfolding. So when they were doing their own personal investigation, they were saying that there was no evidence that the mother actually went up to the school. Problematic. So number one, this is what we say in, the mental health field. If it's not written down, it never happened. So what I recommend for parents, if, you're going to the school and your child is experiencing some type of bullying, number one, write it down. Write down who you spoke with, what time you went, and what you guys discussed. So if situations like this happen, you know what to reference. Because a lot of times as an administration, they're going to protect their own people because nobody wants a lawsuit. So it's going to make sense for them to say, we have no evidence. The only evidence that they may get was from the children, but then a lot of times too, like kids don't want to come forward or they don't have that much information to actually give to administration for it to be solid. So parents, if you feel like your child is being bullied, be relentless. If you can't get through the main school, just go to the school board. You have rights. You can talk to people because at the end of the day, if you don't have documentation about it happening, it never happened. Which is the sad part about this situation. And what saddens me the most is because my sister is the same exact age. She's 12 years old. A lot of people her age are getting into the social media era. And for me, I'm trying to understand, like, how do these kids know how to hang themselves, what type of items to get to, hurt themselves, where to hang themselves particularly. And, McKenzie was found by her grandmother. So that must have been difficult for her. That's what I wonder a lot. Like, where are they getting this information? Are we going to say that she's getting it from social media? Are we saying that she's getting that from the internet? We don't know. So we also have to monitor what our children are, paying close attention to, what they're using the phone for, what's going on in their life to lead them to that point where they feel like they want to harm themselves. And then when I want to address is also the situation of Black people saying, go kill yourself. Why are you hanging out with that white family? You trying to act white. You're ugly. What makes her ugly? Number one, because these little brown girls are actually going through what they call adulterification, which means that a lot of Black girls that are growing up, they don't get as much empathy and as much love as other little girls growing up. They're seen as strong. They're seen as being able to fend for themselves. They don't need affection. They don't need as much love. They don't need protection or closeness, like none of that. So a lot of them actually get treated as adults, which is crazy. If you look up adulterification on the internet, it kind of explains more as to what that means. And then little brown girls are going through that. And when you look at statistics as well for death by suicide, a lot of them are little brown girls, not little brown boys. This is not happening to them. And maybe because little brown boys know how to handle their emotions better, or they have an outlet, or they're able to take what's going on. But I feel like we're doing ourselves an injustice, especially if you have a child that is a bully. That issue needs to be addressed as well, because nobody likes a bully. Nobody wants to deal with your bad kid. I said it. So, if you feel like your child is out there hurting somebody else, think about if it was on the other end, like what other parents are going through this, constantly coming up to school because your child is mistreating somebody else. So, especially too, and when I said earlier about the whole race thing, what makes her want to be white? Because she's hanging out with a white family? Because her best friend is white? Come on. And this stuff that kids say, they hear from their families. This is not something they just automatically pick up out of nowhere. This is learned behavior. We're taught all these things, especially at such a young age, elementary age. Like, they repeat every single thing. So parents, if you're talking around your kids, be cognizant about what you're putting out in the atmosphere, because it could have a long-term effect on everyone involved. The kids being bullied, or people getting treated so horribly. I mean, a lot of times people think when you say kill yourself, it doesn't mean anything. Well, kill yourself may be the last straw to somebody else's life. Kill yourself may be something that could cause something problematic, something traumatic for someone. They could try to harm themselves. And people think that little elementary kids don't have any suicidal thoughts, any suicidal ideations. That's not true. So, like I said, this mostly happens during the school year. So, if, any of the parents are going through this, there is help out there. There's therapy for your kids. There's mental health, inpatient hospitalizations if your kid is expressing suicidal thoughts. That is better than you handling it on your own. There's also somebody else that could be out there giving them an outlet of how to cope with their issues that they're having, at home, at school, with people in their neighborhood. So always be open to helping out your kid to try to express themselves. And we don't have situations like McKenzie, even when the parent has done everything, it seems as though nothing has been handled. So, this is just not only the case. This year alone, there's been over 10 to 12 cases of little brown girls dying by suicide, hanging themselves. There's something about hanging themselves that they're choosing to go down that route. And like I said, where I'm trying to look up more as to how do these kids at this tender age know how to hang themselves, know what to do to harm themselves. So, I do want to pass on the information about the National Suicide Hotline. So I'm just going to click on my phone, try to see what the number is because I don't know it at the top of my head, okay? Let me see here. Okay, the number is 1-800-273-8255. So if you or somebody that you know is going through suicidal thoughts, they could call this line and they'll provide them with resources as to how to handle the situation if it is a crisis. And if it's a situation that they need resources, that will also be provided as well. So please be cognizant of what's going on around you and your children. Look for signs of distress because the signs are always there, but we have to be able to pay attention. And if you do have a child that's bullying somebody else, education is real. So educate them about being tolerant of people who are not the same as them. Thank you guys for tuning in to Silent Symptoms, a Black mental health podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to our podcast. You can catch us on Anchor and all your favorite media streams. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Silent Symptoms Podcast. Let us know if you have any feedback or topics that you would like to hear.